When I caught her cheating and left, she went online saying I hurt her, posted edited photos with fake bruises and black eyes. When people asked why she didn't go to the police, she said, "He's scary. He'll ruin my life." I didn't say a word, just sent one file to the right person. 3 weeks later, she deleted everything, and her job title changed to unemployed. 3 months ago, my entire life changed in less than 24 hours. I went from having a fiancé and a beautiful future ahead to being accused of something so vile that it still makes my stomach turn. But they say the truth always surfaces, like a body in water. No matter how deep you sink it, it always comes back up. I'm a commercial photographer. I shoot everything from weddings to corporate events, though my specialty is product photography. I've spent years building my reputation and client list. My fiancée Catherine worked as the HR director at AmITheA, a mid-sized marketing agency downtown. We met 3 years ago when I was hired to shoot their company retreat. We were supposed to get married this summer. What happened instead was something I never saw coming. I had a 2-day shoot in Chicago for a major client. It was the kind of job that could open doors, so I was focused on nailing it. When I returned home a day early, eager to surprise Catherine, I was the one who got the surprise. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into our apartment. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, a man's jacket thrown over the back of a chair, the shower running. I didn't make a scene, didn't pound on the bathroom door. I simply stood in the hallway and waited. When they emerged, Catherine wrapped in a towel, followed by a guy I recognized as her coworker. There was a moment of complete stillness, like the world had stopped spinning. Catherine's face drained of color. Her coworker, later I learned his name was Bryce, just looked at the floor. What happened next was remarkably civil, all things considered. I didn't yell, didn't throw things, just told them both to get dressed and told Catherine I'd return the next day to collect my things. I spent that night in a hotel, numb, trying to process how 3 years could evaporate in an instant. The next morning, I called my closest friend Marcus to help me move out. I wanted a witness, someone who could verify my behavior in case things turned ugly. A precaution that would soon prove more vital than I could have imagined. When we arrived, Catherine was surprisingly calm. She didn't argue when I gathered my belongings, didn't cry or beg forgiveness. Instead, she watched with this strange detachment, almost like she was observing a scene in a movie rather than the dismantling of our life together. Marcus helped me load everything into his truck and my car. As I was doing a final sweep of the apartment, Catherine finally spoke. "You don't have to do this," she said, arms crossed. "We can work through this. People make mistakes." I didn't bother responding, just handed her my tea and walked out. That night, I crashed at Marcus's place while searching for a new apartment. Everything felt surreal, like I was moving through fog. The betrayal was fresh, raw, but manageable. I thought the worst was behind me. I was catastrophically wrong. 2 days later, my phone exploded with notifications. Friends, family, colleagues, all messaging to ask if I was okay, if the rumors were true. I had no idea what they were talking about until my sister sent a screenshot of Catherine's Instagram story. There she was, my ex-fiancée, sporting what appeared to be a black eye and a split lip. The caption read, "Finally found the courage to leave my abuser. The man I thought I loved showed his true colors when I tried to end things. #Survivor Strong. #No more." I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. It was surreal, like looking into a distorted mirror where everything was backward. In her twisted narrative, she had left me because I was abusive, not the other way around. More posts followed, each one more detailed than the last. Stories of supposed incidents over the years, how I had isolated her from friends, how I controlled her finances, how she feared for her safety. All complete fabrications. In one particularly detailed post, she claimed I had thrown her against a wall when I found texts from Bryce on her phone, an elegant reversal of what had actually happened. She even posted photos of bruises on her arms and ribs, injuries I knew for certain I hadn't caused. The bruises looked convincing, but something about them seemed off. Later, I learned from a mutual friend that Catherine had briefly worked in theater makeup during college, a skill she'd apparently maintained and was now using to create her fabricated evidence. In some photos, I could detect the telltale signs of color correction and shadow manipulation that my photography background made visible. The comments section was filled with sympathy and outrage, people I'd known for years expressing shock and disgust at my behavior. Some called for me to be arrested. Others suggested more direct forms of retribution. When someone asked why she hadn't gone to the police, Catherine responded with calculated fear. "He's too scary. He'll ruin my life if I do. I just want to move on." I sat motionless, watching my reputation, my business, my entire life crumble in real time. My instinct was to fight back, to post my own account, to defend myself, to scream the truth from the rooftops. But a coldness settled over me as I scrolled through her lies. Something told me that engaging would only feed the fire. The more I protested, the more guilty I would appear. So I didn't say a word. Not one. I disabled comments on my professional social media, set my personal accounts to private, and went dark. Instead, I focused on what I could control. First, I documented everything. Every post, every comment, every accusation. Screenshots, timestamps, archives. I created a digital paper trail of her defamation. Next, I reached out to Marcus, who had been with me the entire day we moved my things out. The day Catherine later claimed I had assaulted her. He wrote a detailed statement about what he had witnessed. My calm demeanor, the lack of any conflict, the fact that Catherine had been completely uninjured when we left. But the real turning point came 3 days into this nightmare, when I remembered something crucial. Our apartment building had security cameras. Not just in the lobby or hallways, but covering the parking lot and all entrances. The same parking lot where Catherine claimed I had grabbed her by the throat when she tried to stop me from leaving. An incident that supposedly happened in full view of where those cameras would have captured everything. I contacted the building manager, explained the situation, and requested to view the footage from the day I moved out. He was sympathetic but firm. Building policy prohibited releasing footage to residents without a police report or court order. However, he agreed to review the footage himself to verify my story. 2 days later, he called me back. He couldn't give me the footage, but he could provide a written statement confirming what he'd seen. Me and Marcus carrying boxes to our vehicles, Catherine standing unharmed in the doorway, and no confrontation occurring in the parking lot. His statement noted specific timestamps and camera angles, creating an official record that directly contradicted Catherine's claims. I consulted with a lawyer who advised that getting an actual copy of the footage would require filing a police report for defamation and then submitting a formal discovery request, a process that could take months. But the building manager's statement, combined with Marcus's testimony and the timeline discrepancies in Catherine's posts, provided compelling evidence. I now had documentation proving she was lying. The question was what to do with it. Some friends suggested I go to the police and file a report for defamation. Others recommended I post the evidence publicly to clear my name. But both options felt like they would prolong the nightmare, keep me entangled in her web of lies. Then, I remembered something important about Catherine's position at Vanguard Media. As HR director, Catherine had not just helped draft their social media policy. She was its primary enforcer. The policy explicitly prohibited employees from posting content that could damage the company's reputation or create legal liability. It included specific language about false accusations and using social media to harass or defame others. Catherine had even given presentations to new hires about the serious consequences of violating these guidelines. The irony would have been amusing if the situation weren't so devastating. I didn't act immediately. For a week, I watched as Catherine continued to add to her fictional narrative, gathering support and sympathy. Her posts were being shared hundreds of times. A local women's support group reached out to her, expressing interest in featuring her story after their standard verification process. She was gaining momentum, becoming a minor celebrity in her role as a brave survivor. All while I retreated further into isolation, watching photography clients quietly distance themselves, seeing friends slowly take sides. Finally, after careful consideration, I compiled everything. The building manager's statement, screenshots of her false accusations with timestamps, Marcus's written statement, and a timeline of events, into a single, meticulous file. I added screenshots from her own LinkedIn profile, where she proudly described enforcing the company's social media policy. I wrote a brief, factual cover letter explaining the situation without emotion or accusation. Then I sent it to 2 people, Richard Harding, the CEO of Vanguard Media, and Elaine Foster, their chief legal officer. I didn't include threats, didn't demand Catherine's termination, didn't mention potential lawsuits against their company for employing someone making demonstrably false accusations. I simply presented the evidence and noted that, as her employers, they should be aware of the liability their company might face. Then I went back to the difficult work of rebuilding my life. I expected a swift response from Vanguard, but days passed with only a brief acknowledgement that they had received my email and were reviewing the matter internally. A week became 2, then 3. I assumed corporate bureaucracy was protecting one of their own, another injustice to add to the pile. I focused on finding new clients, reconnecting with friends who had stood by me, and moving forward. Then, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning, I noticed something strange. The torrent of hateful messages had suddenly stopped. When I cautiously checked Catherine's Instagram, I found that all her posts about me had vanished. Every accusation, every fake injury photo, every heartfelt caption about surviving abuse, gone. I thought perhaps she had finally come to her senses, or maybe feared potential legal action. But the truth was more complex, as I would soon discover. Later that week, I received an email from Elaine Foster at Vanguard Media. Her message was carefully worded, corporate in tone, but the essence was clear. They had conducted a thorough investigation into the matter, including interviews with Catherine, Bryce, and other colleagues. Based on their findings, appropriate action had been taken in accordance with company policies. She thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention and expressed the company's commitment to integrity and truth. The email concluded with a subtle but unmistakable apology for any damage caused by their employees' actions. 3 days later, a former colleague Vanguard reached out. Someone who had worked with both Catherine and me during that company retreat where we first met. They filled in the details that Foster's corporate email had omitted. According to my source, the investigation had taken weeks because the company was building an airtight case. They had interviewed multiple employees, reviewed internal communications, and even hired a digital forensics expert to analyze Catherine's photos. Vanguard's legal team had been particularly concerned about the company's potential liability, especially given Catherine's position in HR. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source: Bryce. When questioned about their relationship, he admitted they had been involved for months, not just the one-time indiscretion I had witnessed. More importantly, he confirmed that Catherine had been completely unharmed the day I left and had never mentioned any physical altercation. When shown her social media posts, he reportedly expressed shock at her fabrications. Vanguard had terminated Catherine not just for violating the social media policies she was supposed to enforce, but for creating significant legal exposure for the company. They had given her a choice: resign quietly or be fired with cause. She chose resignation, but was escorted from the building immediately. Within days, her social media presence transformed. First came the deletion of all accusations, then a vague post about taking time for myself and stepping away from social media for a while. Finally, the update to her employment status: unemployed. The women's support group that had initially approached her withdrew their interest after being contacted by Vanguard's legal team, who shared concerns about the veracity of her claims. They issued a careful statement about the importance of thorough verification in advocacy work. I never confronted Catherine, never reached out to gloat or demand an apology. There was no satisfaction in her downfall, only relief that the truth had finally surfaced. 6 months have passed since then. My photography business has slowly recovered, though some clients never returned. The experience pushed me to diversify my skills. I'd always had an interest in videography, but never pursued it seriously. Now, commercial video work makes up about 30% of my business, an unexpected silver lining to a dark chapter. I've moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood. Most importantly, I found a peace I didn't think possible in the immediate aftermath of her lies. The last I heard, Catherine had moved to another state. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she's working retail now, unable to secure another position in HR. Several companies had contacted Vanguard for references, and while they couldn't legally share details of her termination, the absence of a positive recommendation spoke volumes. I learned something valuable from this experience. When someone reveals their true character through cheating, lying, or fabricating harmful stories, the most powerful response isn't always a direct confrontation. Sometimes it's simply stepping aside and allowing natural consequences to unfold. Truth doesn't need to be defended with the same ferocity as lies need to be maintained. In the end, it stands on its own. Update. Thanks for all the supportive messages. Many have asked if I pursued legal action against Catherine. I consulted with my lawyer about filing defamation charges, but ultimately decided against it. Once she deleted everything and moved away, the potential benefits of a lawsuit didn't outweigh the emotional and financial costs. That said, I keep all the evidence secured in case she ever tries something similar in the future. To answer another common question: yes, I did file a police report documenting the false accusations, even though I chose not to press charges. My lawyer advised this as a protective measure, creating an official record in case the situation escalated. I'm doing well now. The transition to videography has actually opened up new creative opportunities I hadn't anticipated. Sometimes the hardest challenges push us in unexpected directions. To anyone facing false accusations, document everything. Stay calm and remember that time is on the side of truth.